Story time, folks. Let me tell you about my life in our tiny village. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your business before you do. I'm the village elder, and people say I'm wise. I guess that's why they always come to me for advice. My life was pretty good, I thought. I had a loving wife and two wonderful kids. Our house wasn't much, but it was always full of laughter. In the evenings, we'd sit by the fire, and I'd share bedtime stories with my little ones. Those were the best times. Our village had this guy, let's call him Tom. He was a real smooth talker, always had a story up his sleeve. Tom could make a tale about watching paint dry sound exciting. We became close friends over the years. He'd come over for dinner, and we'd stay up late swapping stories and jokes. I thought I had it all: respect from the village, a happy family, and a great friend. But you know what they say about things that seem too good to be true? Well, I was about to find out just how true that is. Little did I know, my perfect little world was about to be turned upside down. But that's a story for another time. For now, just picture me, content and clueless, in our cozy little village where everyone knows your name, and apparently a whole lot more. As the days went by, I started noticing something wasn't quite right. My wife, who used to be as predictable as the sunrise, began acting strange. She'd disappear for hours, saying she was just going for a walk or visiting a friend. But something in her eyes didn't sit right with me. I tried to brush it off, but the whispers around the village were hard to ignore. People would hush up when I walked by, giving me looks of pity I couldn't understand. I overheard snippets about secret meetings in the forest, but surely that couldn't involve my wife, right? Then came the day of our big village festival. Everyone was in high spirits, laughing and dancing. I was looking for my wife to share a dance, but I couldn't find her anywhere. As I searched, I heard giggles coming from behind the big oak tree. My heart dropped as I recognized those voices. I stepped around the tree, and there they were. My wife and Tom, locked in an embrace that left no doubt about what was going on. It felt like someone had punched me in the gut. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Before I knew it, I was shouting. People came running, and soon the whole village was there, watching as my world fell apart. The looks of pity suddenly made sense. They had all known, and I had been the fool. The festival came to a screeching halt. My wife was crying, Tom was stammering excuses, but all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. In just a few moments, my perfect life had shattered into a million pieces. As I stood there, surrounded by the shocked faces of our neighbors, I realized this wasn't just a private betrayal anymore. This was a scandal that would rock our little village to its core. And me? I was right at the center of it all, feeling more lost and alone than I ever had in my life. The story of my humiliation spread like wildfire. But little did I know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would test everything I thought I knew about love, forgiveness, and myself. In the days that followed, I was a mess of anger and pain. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. One night, I found myself wandering in the forest, tears streaming down my face. I shouted at the trees, cursing my wife and Tom for their betrayal. "Let their lies take root," I yelled, not knowing the power of my words. Suddenly, the forest went eerily quiet. A chill ran down my spine as I felt a presence around me. I'd heard old stories about forest spirits, but I'd always thought they were just bedtime tales to scare kids. How wrong I was. The next day, something strange started happening. My wife and Tom were trying to explain themselves to the village, spinning tales about their innocent friendship. But as they spoke, tiny twigs began sprouting from their skin. At first, everyone thought it was some kind of joke. But as the lies continued, so did the transformation. The village was in an uproar. People pointed and whispered, some in fear, others in disgust. My wife and Tom were shunned, nobody wanting to be associated with the tree people. They tried to hide away, but their lies had taken on a life of their own. Every time they fibbed about the affair, branches would grow longer, leaves would sprout. It was like watching a time-lapse of a tree growing, but in the most horrifying way possible. They begged for help, but nobody knew what to do. Even I, in my anger, felt a twinge of pity seeing them transform. As for me, I was torn between shock at what was happening and a twisted sense of justice. Part of me felt guilty. Had my curse caused this? But another part felt vindicated. Their lies were literally growing out of control. for everyone to see. The once charismatic Tom could barely speak without twigs sprouting from his mouth. My wife, who used to be the belle of our village, now hid her face in shame as leaves grew from her cheeks. Their betrayal was etched into their very bodies, a constant reminder of the pain they'd caused. I watched as they struggled with their transformation, unsure of what to do. The village buzzed with gossip and fear, wondering if the curse might spread. As for me, I was lost in a storm of emotions: anger, guilt, fear, and a tiny spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, there was a way to fix this mess. Little did I know, this curse was about to send me on a journey that would change everything. But that's a story for another time, folks. For now, just picture our little village, where bedtime stories had come to life in the most unexpected and terrifying way. As days turned into weeks, I couldn't bear to see what was happening in our village anymore. The sight of my wife and Tom slowly turning into trees was too much to handle. So, with a heavy heart and a backpack full of supplies, I set off on a journey to find a cure for this curse I'd unknowingly brought upon them. The path ahead was long and treacherous. I trekked through dense forests, climbed steep mountains, and waded through rushing rivers. Each step was a battle against my own anger and pain, but I pressed on, determined to make things right. One night, as I sat by my campfire telling myself a bedtime story to keep my spirits up, I heard a rustle in the bushes. Out stepped a glowing creature, half deer, half butterfly. "Why do you journey, Elder?" it asked in a voice like wind chimes. I poured out my story, surprised at how good it felt to finally talk about it. The creature listened patiently, then said, "The cure you seek isn't in a potion or spell. It's within you." I didn't understand at first, but as I continued my journey, I met more magical beings. A wise old turtle taught me about patience. A mischievous wind spirit showed me the power of laughter, and a gentle forest giant helped me see the bigger picture of life. With each encounter, I felt something shifting inside me. The anger that had been my constant companion started to fade, replaced by a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. Then, one starry night, as I sat atop a mountain, it hit me. The cure for the curse was forgiveness. Letting go of my anger and forgiving my wife and Tom was the key to breaking the spell. But could I do it? The thought of forgiving them made my stomach churn. Their betrayal had hurt me so deeply. I spent nights tossing and turning, wrestling with my feelings. Part of me wanted to hold on to the anger. It felt safer, more familiar. Yet, as I looked back on my journey and all I'd learned, I realized that holding on to this bitterness was turning me into a different kind of tree. Rigid, unyielding, and unable to grow. The real test was still to come. Could I find it in my heart to truly forgive them? Could I let go of the pain and anger that had driven me on this quest? As I started my journey back to the village, these questions echoed in my mind. I knew that the real story, the one that would define who I was about to unfold. And let me tell you, folks, it was going to be a tale worth telling. As I made my way back home, my mind was still wrestling with the idea of forgiveness. That's when I stumbled into a clearing and saw her, a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile, tending to an injured fox. She introduced herself as Lily, a healer from a nearby village. We got to talking, and before I knew it, I was pouring out my whole story. Lily listened without judgment, her eyes full of compassion. She offered me a place to rest, and I ended up staying in her village for a while. Over the next few weeks, Lily and I grew close. We'd spend hours talking by the fire, sharing stories and laughter. She taught me about healing herbs, and I shared with her the wisdom I'd gained on my journey. Slowly, I felt my heart opening up again. One night, as we watched the stars, Lily took my hand. The warmth I felt wasn't just from her touch. It was something growing inside me. Love was blossoming, soft and unexpected, like the first flower of spring. But I knew I had to return to my village. With a promise to come back, I said goodbye to Lily and headed home, my heart lighter than it had been in months. As I approached my village, I hardly recognized it. An eerie silence hung in the air, and there in the village square stood 2 fully grown trees where my wife and Tom should have been. My heart sank as I got closer. I could still make out their features in the bark, my wife's gentle curves, Tom's strong jawline, but their eyes were closed, their mouths frozen mid-word. They had transformed completely, unable to speak or move. The villagers gathered around me, their faces a mix of relief at my return and sorrow at what had happened. They told me how my wife and Tom had continued to lie, trying to deny their wrongdoing until the very end. With each lie, the transformation had accelerated until they were fully turned into trees. As I stood there, looking at what remained of my old life, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. Sadness for what was lost, regret for the curse I had unintentionally cast, and a strange sense of peace. My journey had changed me. I wasn't the same man who had left in anger all those months ago. I reached out and touched the rough bark of what used to be my wife's cheek. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. The real test of my journey was about to begin. Could I find it in my heart to forgive, even now? Could I break this curse and give them a second chance? As the sun set on my first day back, I prepared myself for the challenge ahead. This bedtime story was far from over, and the most important chapter was yet to be written. As I stood there, facing the two trees that were once my wife and Tom, I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. The whole village watched, waiting to see what I would do. It was story time, but this was no bedtime tale. This was real life, with real consequences. I closed my eyes, remembering everything I'd been through. The pain of betrayal, the anger that led to the curse, the journey that taught me so much. I thought about Lily and the love I'd found, about the magical creatures who showed me the power of forgiveness. But could I really do it? Could I forgive them after everything they'd done? I placed my hands on the rough bark, feeling the life pulsing within. They were still in there, trapped by their lies and my anger. I struggled with the decision. Part of me wanted to leave them as trees, a permanent reminder of their betrayal. It would be easier, wouldn't it, to walk away and start my new life, leaving the past behind. But as I stood there, I realized that forgiveness wasn't just about them. It was about me, too. Holding on to this anger was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I had to let it go, not for them, but for myself. Taking a deep breath, I made my choice. "I forgive you," I whispered, feeling the words catch in my throat. "I forgive you both." As soon as the words left my lips, a warm light began to glow from within the trees. The bark started to crack and peel away, revealing human skin underneath. Slowly, my wife and Tom emerged, gasping for air as if they'd been underwater. The village erupted in a mix of cheers and shocked whispers. My wife and Tom looked at me with tears in their eyes, their faces a mix of shame, gratitude, and disbelief. But I knew this wasn't a happily ever after ending. Actions have consequences, and trust once broken is hard to rebuild. I told them, my voice firm but not unkind, that they needed to leave the village. They had to start new lives elsewhere, away from the pain they'd caused here. They nodded, understanding. As they packed their things, I saw the relief in their eyes, relief at being given a second chance, even if it meant leaving everything behind. As I watched them walk away, I felt a strange mix of sadness and peace. This chapter of my life was closing, but a new one was beginning. I thought about Lily, about the future we might build together. The sun was setting as I turned back to the village, ready to share this final twist in our tale. It had been a long and difficult journey, but as I looked at the faces of my neighbors, I knew that this story, my story, would be told for generations to come. And who knows, maybe someday it would become just another bedtime story. Teaching children about the power of forgiveness and the magic that can happen when we open our hearts to change. After the dust settled, I invited Lily to come live in our village. She arrived with her healing herbs and her warm smile, and together, we started a new chapter in my life. It wasn't always easy. There were nights when the old pain would resurface, and I'd wake up in a cold sweat. But Lily was always there, her hand in mine, reminding me that I wasn't alone. As time passed, word spread about what had happened in our village. People from far and wide started coming to us for advice. They'd share their stories of betrayal, heartbreak, and anger. Lily and I would listen, offering what wisdom we could. We became known as the couple who could heal not just bodies, but hearts too. I'd tell them my story, not as a bedtime tale, but as a living lesson. I'd share how forgiveness had freed me, how letting go of anger had opened the door to new love. Lily would add her insights, and together we helped many find their way through the darkness of betrayal to the light of healing. Our village changed too. The elders started using our story to teach the younger ones. They'd gather the children around the fire and tell them about the curse, the journey, and the power of forgiveness. It became a kind of folklore, a cautionary tale about the importance of honesty and the possibility of redemption. Years flew by, and Lily and I grew old together. We became beloved figures in the village, known for our compassion and understanding. People would seek us out for advice, for healing, or just to hear our story one more time. And those two trees in the forest? They still stand, a silent reminder of what happened. Sometimes I walk there, placing my hand on their bark, feeling the life within. They serve as a powerful symbol, a reminder of the consequences of betrayal, but also of the possibility of a second chance. As I near the end of my days, I often reflect on my journey. It wasn't the life I had planned, but it's been a life full of love, growth, and meaning. And isn't that what really matters? So, my friends, as you drift off to sleep tonight, remember this story. Remember that even in our darkest moments, there's always hope. That forgiveness isn't just a gift you give others, it's a gift you give yourself. And that love, real love, can bloom even after the harshest winter. This is the lesson I leave behind. A lesson of honesty, of trust, of second chances. It's not just a bedtime story, it's a guide for living. And as long as people remember it, a part of me, of Lily, and yes, even of my wife and Tom, will live on. And who knows? Maybe someday, many years from now, another lost soul will find their way to those two trees in the forest. And perhaps they'll feel the magic that still lives there, the magic of forgiveness, of redemption, and of love that stands the test of time.